What is a dirty little secret about an industry that you have worked in, that people outside the industry really should know? Story 1. Not all that much of a secret, but I used to work in a peanut butter factory. We produced about 25-30ish different store brands ranging from very cheap to stupidly expensive. We had a grand total of 3 recipes: chunky, not chunky, and no additives. Story 2. I worked at a major jewelry company in the US. When we wanted to buy jewelry, we paid what it cost to make the product, material, labor, shipping, plus 10%. I paid around $115 for a pair of $950 diamond earrings. Story 3. If you're ever buying bulk gravel/sand/crushed stone from a local pit/quarry that has scales to weigh the amount of product you're getting ducked because you're paying for water. Most of these pit/quarries spray the living duck out of their stockpiles before/during operation to make the material heavier in the truck. Never buy by the ton, always buy aggregate by the yard. 3. It's a measure of volume, not weight. Source: I own a rock crushing business/multiple quarries and I charge by the yard. 3. To not screw the public. Story 4. I wouldn't say it's mostly a secret, but agency staffing firms churn and burn college graduates who are basically thrown in the wild. The recruiter you work with may be gone in 6 months, and that's why a lot of ghosting happens. Story 5. There is a lot of money spent every year that decides where specific items are placed on grocery store shelves. If you're at a grocery store that's part of a chain, and you look at a shelf and there's an item that's approximately at eye level, I guarantee you that the company that makes that item paid a lot of money to put them there. There's lots of weird psychological tricks that go on in terms of how stores are laid out. Story 6. People like to think that data analytics is some objective truth when there is so much bias and room for subjectivity in data collection, analysis, interpretation, and communication. Oftentimes insights are cherry-picked datasets deliberately presented to make a specific point rather than having the data craft the conclusion. Story 7. The roses you buy at Valentine's Day were harvested around Christmas. It's the worst time of the year to buy roses, and I don't mean because they're more expensive. They're also the worst quality because it's a longer holding time between harvest and use than any other time of the year. Never ever send flowers through an order processing service. Look at the location you're in or sending to and talk to a florist in that area directly. Don't pick a picture off some external website. Ask the florist what they have and can make that fits your budget. If you're worried, ask them to text you a pic of the completed design. Story 8. Aerospace has a phrase: get healthy in maintenance. Underbid the contract to win to the work, then they overcharge on the maintenance activities. It's an investment strategy that pays well. Many aerospace sites have cash cows, long-term maintenance contracts that keep the money coming into the site. Story 9. Locksmith here. We can get into any lock/door within 30 seconds. All the posturing and bringing out an impressive toolkit and hammer drill is just showmanship to prolong the call out. 30 seconds flat. Story 10. You have to know your way around healthcare to get good healthcare. Here's a summary of some tips. What you should know. 1. Your patient rights. You can ask for a referral to a specialist. You can ask for second opinions. You can ask to see what is in your chart. Know your rights. 2. If you have a family member in a hospital or long-term care home, please visit and be there as much as possible. When you are sick or old, you are just not able to summon the energy to be on top of med errors or even general care. The more eyes on the care and environment, the better for your family member. 3. Advocate for your family member. Do some research too. What is the illness? What are some options? And take these to the doctor and ask if they're appropriate, with the patient's consent obviously, for the patient. 4. Follow up. If the office doesn't call you, follow up. Keep following up with offices, pharmacies, specialists, etc. until you're satisfied. 5. If you are in the States, review your bill. Go over every item and see what can be negotiated and hound them until you feel it's fair. The squeaking wheel gets the grease. 6. Get a job in healthcare. Not a clinician? No problem. Environmental services and portering are excellent, well-paying entry-level jobs that can get you potentially into a union. You will learn hospital and healthcare really fast. 7. Before your family member goes home from hospital, make sure you see a discharge planner or a social worker to talk about discharge. Hospitals are full and they usually are pressed to send people home fast, with healthcare at home being an option. But it's not the only option. Talk to the discharge planner and push back if you need to. Look up questions to ask the discharge planner. 8. If you want the doctor to do/prescribe/refer something and they choose not to, you are within your rights to say, may I have that option noted in my chart? I'd like to keep track of what I've asked you about. Innocent, right? Well, it's a good way to get the clinician to think about whether they want their rebuttal of your suggestion in the chart. 9. If it feels wrong, please see someone else. Don't just blindly trust health professionals. They're people too. They're not magic. Some are better than others. Read clinician reviews so you at least know what to expect. To all those folks who go into appointments with chronically ill family or partners, you are guardian angels. Keep doing what you're doing. It is more supportive, and the optics for the clinicians matter, than you know. Story 11. When an app pops up with a "Do you like this app?" thing, the yes button goes to the App Store for a review, the no button goes to an internal complaint process. This on average filters upset customers away from the App Store and artificially raises app score by a whole star on average. That is the only way most corporate service apps have 4 stars. Story 12. Whenever you see a high-profile person publishing an opinion piece in a news outlet, 9 times out of 10, they didn't write that. The author came up with a 1 to 2 sentence concept of what they wanted to say. Their second in command engaged whoever the ghostwriter is. The ghost created the copy. The high-profile person's number 2 reviewed for necessary changes. The high-profile person themselves reviewed and signed off, and the number 2 engaged marketing people to place the piece in a news outlet. If you see an article from a CEO, a senior VP, a member of an elected body, anyone with status, they don't write their own stuff. This is not inherently bad. Organization leaders are busy, and they have the resources to have a team oversee their public-facing thoughts, so they don't have to worry about it. Still, the opinion pages of just about every news outlet in America, and elsewhere, are populated largely by ghostwriters. Story 13. I used to work as a secretary at a roofing company. A common practice of scumbag roofing companies, in regards to rubber row home roofs, if your neighbor calls a scumbag roofing company and they fix their roof and then not long after you or another neighbor's house starts leaking, there's a terrible possibility that the scumbag company went out and knifed a hole in your roof. They do this because your neighbor may recommend their company to you as their roof is no longer leaking. Scummy move. Story 14. Hotels don't change the comforter on the beds in between guests unless there's a noticeable stain on it. If the pillows are placed on a chair instead of on the bed at checkout, housekeeping assumes they weren't used and puts them back on the bed without changing the pillowcases. All of this is due to cutting corners in housekeeping because the keepers are under strict timers for each room, and they have an insane amount of rooms to do every day. Story 15. Cruise ship crew members are underpaid and overworked, to the point where it'd be illegal in most rich countries. Explanation: I worked for a company that serviced cruise ships while they were onshore and in port. The staff and crew on the ships, who actually travel with the ship, are often from developing countries and are really underpaid for the amount of hours they put in. Here in Canada, and I'm sure in the US too, it'd likely be below minimum wage. How can the companies get away with this? Flags of convenience. Much like how cars have different license plates from different provinces/states, ships must also be registered to a jurisdiction. But because there aren't enforced rules about the ship actually being from where they're registered, they tend to have home ports from countries where labor laws and regulations are more relaxed, and follow the rules from those places instead of their actual places of operation. The crew puts up with this because despite being underpaid by wealthy countries' standards, that translates to a lot of money in their home countries. So if they work for a few years on a cruise ship, they can gather enough money to put their kids through school or buy a new house back in their own country. So they tolerate it. This is why you have so many ships that have Panama City or Nassau painted on the rear as their home port, even if the company itself is based in Florida or something and the ship itself has never been to its own port of registry. Story 16. I'm way late to this party, but I used to be a political campaign manager and political office staffer. The US government is run by an invisible network of interconnected staffers. The good elected officials are informed, but it's still the staffers who inform them. They write bills, they write bill summaries, they research the issues, they write the things the elected officials say. Without staffers, the vast majority of elected officials wouldn't have a ducking clue what's going on, and we have an absurd amount of influence over the information they base their platforms off of. On the campaign side, the reason there aren't viable third-party candidates in the US is that campaigns are highly complicated, absurdly expensive, and outrageously time-consuming. Successful candidates even for your state legislative races really can't do it all by themselves, which is why everyone hitches their wagon to a party. Only ultra-wealthy people can really afford to run their own successful campaigns, and even they usually need a party apparatus just to get the competent manpower required to run a successful campaign. Our first-past-the-post means of voting virtual guarantees a two-party system, because elections are just extremely difficult for individuals or small party organizations to campaign in. Story 17. While in the process of buying a car, the finance manager will openly discuss your financials, especially if very good or very bad, with most of the staff thereafter. The closed door meeting is mainly a disguise to make you feel comfortable so you will buy add-ons. In reality, you will get shit talked around the dealer if you have bad credit or they discover something interesting when running credit. At the 3 dealers I worked at in 2 different states at the end of HS and through college, every single one was the same. God knows how much actual personal info gets tossed around haphazardly. I'll never finance through a dealer/manufacturer because of it. As a side note, these finance managers rarely ever have a background in finance. It's a lucrative position that most have to work their way up to. If you can deal with the hours, they're just seasoned car salespeople. Story 18. In high school, I worked in a warehouse for a major shipping company, loading semi-trucks with packages. I saw a lot of people who didn't care or would get frustrated because of the work environment and start throwing packages, stepping on them, disregarding fragile labels, being rough with packages that obviously contained high-value stuff like laptops and TVs. 1. If you ship something, make sure you package it with sufficient bubble wrap. 2. When a package is delivered to you, that box is filthy. You should probably wash your hands after opening it and do not set it on your bed or kitchen table. Story 19. IT certification companies that sell courses to get you into a well-paid IT job by learning while you still do your day job are selling you a hollow dream. I did sales. Not a single person or my team, suckered into buying an expensive set of courses got a job in IT, anywhere, ever. Well, most. The company did get a single student into a job, but it was with us. In the end, after giving phone-ins marks the sales script I just used to say to them, now ask me how many people we've found jobs for. I got sacked when management listened to tapes of my phone calls. It was the only favor they ever did me. Most people just didn't finish the courses because they were too tired after work, but the company knew this and still sold them. Story 20. Worked in a distribution center for a major US clothing retailer. We took in a lot of clothing returns, and to cut our costs we almost stopped inspecting the clothing altogether. If the plastic packaging isn't manufacturer labeled plus sealed and is a generic plastic sealed bag, there is a good chance someone else wore that before and it was not cleaned. If you order clothing online, please give your clothing a double check and wash them before you wear them. Story 21. Most companies run on a patchwork of technologies and setup, often with items being left alone because it works but no one knows why or how. Most IT equipment is also the cheapest the company can buy. They see it as a cost and not as revenue, so they don't care. Most older companies, especially financial companies, are still running off of the terminal systems that were implemented decades ago. Any new technologies they are using are often interfacing with these terminals at some point to remove the user interaction directly in the terminals. Also, the actual threat of cyber attacks are massive, and companies have built some massive walls to protect the companies. It's mind-boggling just how many spam/phishing emails are being stopped, the number of connections deemed as treats being blocked by the firewall, and the constant user stupidity that needs to be fixed or prevented. I used to work for a financial company that wasn't a bank. Their main application, the one that ran the entire company, was a 16-bit application. They were so far behind that when it came time to upgrade to Windows 7 from Windows XP after the extended end of life, they had to upgrade computers to Windows 7 32-bit because 16-bit applications wouldn't work on 64-bit application. Since I was given a 64-bit PC and needed that app, I needed this for my job, I called up IT and was told they're still testing out solutions. So they had close to 5 years to prepare for this and still somehow got blindsided by it. Story 22. Not a cop but a city attorney let this one slip. The dash cam doesn't turn on until the lights start flashing. I was in court for a failure to stop at a stop sign ticket, and one of the city attorneys threatened to get the video since I refused to pay the ticket. I stopped at that damn stop sign. Literally, there was a long line of cars in front of me. We were taking turns at the intersection. Anyways, I said sure, I would love to see it. They made me go home and come back the next day, again hoping I would just pay. I showed up the next day and asked where the footage was. That's when they told me there isn't any until the cherries are activated. Ticket was dismissed.